Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I'm here with Mir Islam. Hey Mir, bye. How are you doing today?
Hey, hi Vikram. I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. How's the day been and how's the New York weather treating you?
Yeah, New York weather is a bit colder like now, and then we are heading towards the winter. The day has been good. I did some practice and got some like work done, and here we are.
Yeah, I think coming into those winter months, it's always like practice tends to feel a little bit cozier. I'm not sure if you feel the same.
Yeah, winter is definitely good time for practice, and particularly the winter in New York. You are kind of forced to stay inside unless like you have something to that takes you outside.
Yeah.
Or so like less hangout like an outside, so you spend more time in practice. Cozy, I would say, you know, for me, practice like it's will happen like so whether it's cozy or not. So I
Yeah.
never like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so today I'm hoping to talk, through a little bit about your own background, your thoughts on tabla, both the music of it and then the practice of it. And then sort of the collaborations with other musicians as well as your musical likes and dislikes. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Of course, yeah, same here. Happy to be here, and not often like you get to think through what goes in your like in mind space. So it's a good opportunity.
Of course, of course. So let's start off with your early life. From what I've read about you, you grew up in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Can you describe sort of the atmosphere of Dhaka? Obviously, it's a huge cultural hub for both music and art. Um, Describe sort of like what brought you to tabla in Dhaka itself and how that environment maybe contributed to your upbringing.
Hey, thank you. So now I was born in Bangladesh and I grew up there. In my late 20s, I came to States, but before that, like I was, all my training in music and upbringing, everything is in Dhaka. So my childhood. And when I was a kid, I can say that the very equivalent like piano lesson, just like that, my tabla classes started. So
Mm.
when I was around 7, I had a teacher, Said Hafizur Rahman. He used to come to my house, and then he used to give me a lesson. And then I also joined a group class in a music school called Chayanot, which is a renowned music institution in Bangladesh. It's a music school. So there I did a 6-year course. There I was studying with Madan Gopal Das. So he was also a renowned tabla teacher there.
Wonderful.
That time we had, let's say, a lot of like music around us because like culturally we were like Bengali. So we had like our own music and then the internet or CD, more communication, those things were like, popping up. I'm talking about like the 90s. So during the 90s, I have seen as a like child the cassette, and then all those analog stuffs and then turning into floppy disk and then to CD to DVD. So how like those things like changed like drastically. So I have like seen a little bit of that. So now that was kind of the music, live music going on, and then you have TV access to digital, like and YouTube was coming up new. So a lot of like the tabla that I have seen in my life through YouTube, those were we were trying to find like someone who has a lot of like bandwidth to get some downloads. So I'm telling the music that I consumed as a child that was like through cassettes
Right.
and then to live like shows.
Yeah.
And my first ever like musical concert that I have ever been that was Ustad Zakir Hussain and Allah Rakha Khan Sahab there and then with one of their brothers with Sultan Khan Sahab. So all of them like they were playing a concert. So I was a child of 7. So I had an opportunity to go to that concert. So and then I watched them like from very like close distance. I only remembered I could pick up Dhadin Din the Tintal.
Yeah.
And I came back home and I said that yeah I know this one. So and then so but that created a lot of impact. So but now in Dhaka, so we had a musical environment. It's not as much based or focused towards classical. It's more towards the Bengali song, some contemporary music, we have a good band and rock music scene in Bangladesh also. So not as much as classical, but now classical is like picking up, but still compared to Indian cities, it's much smaller in scale. Anyway, so music was like, like that. And then a little bit about after I completed my classes in China, then I was like really fortunate to have meet my guru, Pandit Ashok Paul. He's a disciple of Pandit Gyan Prakash Ghosh.
Mm,
And then uh, around like when I was an eighth grader, I'm talking about like 2002. So during that time, then I met him, and then my actual like all studies that started. I got the first that was my first connection to the gateway of like tabla.
mm,
Because, and we understand in music there's limitations within teachers or limitations in knowledge, and, it can be very hierarchical. But that was like my turning point. And then till then, from that point till date, I'm studying with him. And then also, so that was like my Bangladesh like period. And then like, also, I studied with my teacher, Pandit Ashok Babu online as well. Like, we are always in touch. And
wonderful.
then, but after coming to States, then I started studying with Pandit Anindya Chatterjee as well. And then Guruji has been like really kind and like, and very, very generous.
That's wonderful. And it's so awesome to hear. It seems like you've ran the whole gamut of tabla teachers as well as like styles of learning, right? You've done sort of the Sina Basina, sitting one-on-one with a teacher type Taalim, and then the coursework as well. So what would you say are like the major benefits or cons of both styles, or any observations you've had from that?
Yeah, before I get into that, I have to mention my two other teachers.
Please.
So when I was in Dhaka, so around like, let's say, uh, 2009, 10, during that time I was in college. So at the time, I was also lucky. There was this Vidwan, Pandit Gopal Mishra ji.
Mm.
He's a like, very like, foremost player within Banaras Gharana. He also happens to be the son-in-law of Kishan Maharaj ji.
Oh, wow.
Pandit Kishan Maharaj ji. So now Gopal ji was in Dhaka for 2 years as a visiting teacher, a visiting guru from Indian, like, Indian High Commissioner, Indian Embassy. So Indian government appointed him as a like, guru there to teach students tabla. And I was lucky to study with him for 2 years, and I have like, I got some exposure to Banaras Gharana. And then before coming to States around 2014 to 15, during that time, I also had an opportunity to do workshops with Pandit, excuse me, Suresh Talwalkar ji.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was also a little like brief exposure I got, like, with their pedagogy.
Yeah.
So coming to your like in the question that you asked, so the one-on-one and academics, I would say the group classes and like, it again is, and even the one-on-one, it's varies from teacher to teacher.
Right.
It's very much like, how this like, someone is like leading and someone is sharing the information, their teaching style. And there's a like, trade-off. When it's a group class, you have to tone it down or bring it to average. So it's not like, that beneficial for individual growth.
Hmm.
But it's also like you get a lot done in group class that like, we just like one-on-one, it's difficult to find the motivation.
And I think I'm going to fast forward here quite a bit just because we're on the topic. But Mirda, the one thing that I saw is that you teach in New York and you run a very successful tabla school. So just while we're on the subject of teaching and pedagogy, sort of what observations have you had from like your childhood experiences and your young adult experiences in teaching, group classes, individual, and how has that informed your approach to teaching now?
Yeah, so I actually like, have not like taught much. So even like, my the school or the group class that I teach, so that's pretty recent. So let's say I was like teaching one-on-one students for last 3 4 years, 4 years. So
Okay.
background stories, if I like, tell that, that's pretty interesting. So for a long, long time when I was in Bangladesh, so I was like, maybe substituting some classes
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like, teach maybe some proxy classes for my guru.
Hmm.
Or like, and then I was joining this music school channel, like, in Dhaka. So there I was like teaching maybe as a tabla accompanist like, teacher.
Hmm.
And then a lot of time, like, I will lead the class by explaining them the tal. And then some of those students will come for practice or like, private classes with me.
Yeah.
So I gave a lot of one-on-one coaching, but like not really teaching anyone for long term. So
Right,
maybe
right.
like, 3 lessons or 4 lessons, maybe 2 months. Then and then I will move on to another like more. So it was never long term.
Right.
Only recently, maybe from 3 or 4 years ago, there was one guy who kept on like coming back that, hey, I want to study with you, and then I was like not giving any solid reply. I was saying, oh, okay, I will revisit that like after 2 weeks or after a month. But then that person was persistent.
Yeah.
Then and he started taking lessons with me, and then I taught him for like maybe 3 4 years,
Yeah.
and then I like I kind of like started to like to teach,
Yeah.
but then teaching like different one-on-one students was difficult. So then I started teaching in group because I can share the same information like with like more people at the same time.
Yeah. No, it's always interesting looking at that transition from like learning to teaching. And I feel like in some way they're almost one and the same, like you learn one, you teach one, it makes you reanalyze the information in a completely different way.
And also that it's kind of like, let's say, the job of a teacher in our music is like a coach.
Yeah.
So I have not faced a lot of issues that my students like are facing. So
Hmm.
how do you adapt, or how do you put yourself like on their shoes
Yeah.
and try to like figure it out? Because it's like the role of a guru is there. You are like a doctor. You have to diagnose that, and
Mm.
you have to try out, and then you have to also do some titration, the
Yeah.
dosing, right?
Yeah, how much to practice, what to practice for how long, those type
Yeah,
of things. I guess, because I guess, having too much of that can ultimately be a bad thing. Too little might not allow for growth. So just getting that Goldilocks amount is difficult.
it
Now,
is. It is definitely. And patience, patience is very, very difficult. And we live in a world where everyone wants to run fast. So now, how do you really get things fast? Like get fast, but growth takes time.
yes, growth definitely takes time. And the patience that's required both as like a teacher and student, or I feel like are almost one and the same in that regard. Moving on, I
Sure.
know we discussed sort of many different gurus, many different gharanas as well. How has your hand adopted to those different gurus, as well as teaching styles, as well as stylistic choices that you choose to make? I know you were mentioning, you have teachers from obviously the Farrukhabad Gharana, but also Benares as well, and then there are also regional differences. So balancing all those regions in your Taalim, how did that impact your hand in specific?
Yeah, good question. In terms of the nikas, I would say I did not change much of the nikas when I went to study with Gopalji, like Gopal Mishraji, the Banaras Guru. So him, uh, I did not change my nikas like when I was like playing those, and I was already, let's say, at an intermediate student level or early like performer level. I already like let's say I went to the study with him, but by that time I played my first or like second paid gig. So
Yeah.
let me put it like that.
Mm.
So I already knew kind of some basics, and then I knew maybe eight or like 12 kaida, and then maybe 20 or 30 compositions.
Hmm.
So in Farrukhabad I could play some solo. Now, so when I had to adopt like the Banaras like ones, so it in my Nikas it did not change much, but definitely in the thought process of the improvisation idea.
Mm.
Or
Mm. Mm.
so let's say the same qaida we play in Farrukhabad. So we will our qaidas that does not like have a lot of micro beats.
Mm.
Like necessarily. In Punjab, the movements are more intricate. So
Okay.
Banaras, I felt it's more on top of the beat. It's more like straight beats and then heavy hits. So the
Yes.
selection of the bowl, those vocabularies are like different. So you can see how their qaida and their literature has those information. On top of that, I could see in that 2 years how Gopalji is like thinking in the improvisation. And
Hmm.
then he was like, teaching me those maybe palta, so four paltas, then six palta. Okay, he's giving me one sitting, maybe 12 palta for one kaida. And they would he will teach me some compositions called Bhat. These
Hmm.
are small kaida-like compositions in Banaras.
Hmm.
So now, long story short, I could see their vocabulary and then their uh, technique or the sound they prefer, and then how they're improvising. It felt to me it's more like straight top on top of the bit. Like they also have like I'm not saying that the Laikari is not there. The Laikari is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's more on top of the bit.
Yeah.
And then now Banaras and there I did not like change much of the style, but it definitely in my improvisation like idea when I go try to play for dance like I try to play those styles like more and then think of them and then like try to replicate the idea or maybe the tonal quality. So that's there, but within other teachers and like different it's difficult to really say head to head comparison because I also have grown over the years as a tabla.
Right.
So
Right.
now my perception of the talim or maybe uh, my idea of like how what is right that has also evolved like over time.
Right. Yeah, it's the pencil has sharpened a little bit in that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I would say every time like I had a different teacher, but all throughout the whole time, like my teacher Ashok Babu, so he was always like consistently there. So he
Right.
was not always like the coach there. So
Hmm.
it's not that I was if I had a lot of questions or like I need consultancy, like I always like knew that like this person is there. And then now in the age where we can record like stuffs and then we can immediately WhatsApp our like teachers. So my guru Pandit Anindya Chatterjee, now I can I can access him, and then
Right.
he's curious like to give his time and then share whatever like is necessary for my growth.
Hmm.
So that's and then same for Ashok Babu. So now like this is like gold mine.
Yeah.
Uh, really fortunate about like living in a time like this and this technology and like how do you use it and how do you uh, make it like in a way the most out of it. So
Yeah.
that perception, I would say, like this is like more new to me.
Yeah.
So that I did not like think growing up, like my earlier years, I did not like think like that. But now I'm trying to involve like more of archiving or how can we like put another microscope, like maybe having a magnifier
Yeah.
just to check like what we are doing are we doing it like right?
Yeah. No, it's so funny that you were telling that story earlier about how cassettes were your first exposure to Hindustani classical music. Funny enough, I think, my dad used to play those cassettes like Shiv Kumar ji, Hari ji, and Zakir ji would have those landscape series of cassettes. So he had like desert and mountain and so that was my first exposure to Hindustani classical music. So it's the reason I bring that up is because in those situations, you're not necessarily replaying or skipping back to the track to figure out what is the tabla player playing, right? You're more figuring out like broad strokes. What does it sound like? What tal are they playing? At that time I couldn't even I had no idea about rag. I barely any idea of tal. So it all just sounded pretty to me, right? Or maybe this sounded more serious and that sounded more light. So it's interesting how technology can be leveraged in different ways musically. But in some ways, I also feel like it can be a double-edged sword, right? They could be like if you have too much exposure to certain things, you might perhaps mess up a little bit of your progress. So I think as music teachers and musicians, it's important to to keep that in the back of our mind.
Of course, of course. You know, uh, I would say that the appeal that you have for the whole record or a whole performance. So
Hmm.
which, when you play a cassette or you play a long play, you like not necessarily, you are going back as you mentioned. So from there, we have like come to attention span of like having a reel like within 15 seconds,
Right.
30, 20 seconds.
Right.
So almost close, we are going back to close to pictures. It
Yeah.
used to be picture and then became video. Now it became like shorter. So anyway, so the Riyaaz and then the growth, so that is not going to come with the screen.
Mm.
So that is offline. That is offline, and then the real music is going to be offline. The music that you feel in the room and played in front of you, that is the real music. That's and nothing can replace or the feel. That feel you cannot record that
Yeah. Yeah.
or that anywhere. So and that's something that what I'm trying to play. And then now my other using the technology. So that's what I would say that we should definitely try to keep the double-edged sword in
Yeah.
check.
Yeah.
But it's definitely you can get uh, too too much if you get into too much technicality then and if you have like too much resources that's also very bad because I remember when I had those cassettes I
Mhm.
to record some of my cassette records like in those classes I think those talim I remember better than the ones I have videotaped.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Yeah, my guess would be I imagine that there was a lot more work that you probably had to put into recording the cassette and then transferring that information, listening to it.
Yeah, journalizing and then and then and those cassettes were expensive. And those cassettes were expensive. And then they were budgeted, so I knew I had to know that which are really important, and
Yeah.
then maybe then one certain part of the class I'm like recording. But now we can literally record everything.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's so easy to take for granted the voice memos app on our phone where we can just press that red button and instantly have access to that moment. But I think something that you mentioned earlier regarding sort of the acoustic experience of music, I think is so important. And especially when it comes to tabla, where so much of it is related to tone quality. And despite how good sort of our microphones are, the in-person experience of tone is still very profound.
Of course, yeah. And microphone can enhance your tone, but you also have to know, how microphones work.
Hmm.
So now let's say, yeah, the in-person tone and then nothing can replace that.
Hmm.
So and if your tone is good, you don't need any good microphone.
Yeah,
Any microphone, like say, let's say the microphone, if it's good or bad, that's given
yeah, yeah,
constant, and then now what is it the variable? Your own quality of your playing is the variable. If
hmm,
you are amazing, then it will sound amazing. If you are moderate, it will sound moderate. If you're bad, it will
yeah,
sound bad.
yeah,
But the microphone is going to amplify what you are playing. Now, over time, I have to learn how the microphone also works
yeah.
because that becomes part of your voice.
Hmm. Is Have you devoted a significant amount of time to understanding sort of microphones and sound production a little bit? Has that been a part of your transition as a musician?
So it's interesting. So back in home in Dhaka, so I started playing concerts professionally around 2008, 9,
Hmm.
and then 2009 to 2015. So during that time, I was already playing with string players, giving classical concerts, can play
Hmm.
tabla, vocal. So classical concerts of local artists, and then touring, visiting Indian artists. So
Hmm.
I was like playing some gigs there.
Hmm.
And I was frustrated with the sound, guys, because now in Bangladesh, so we do not rarely will get one or two good engineers who understand the acoustic sounds,
Yeah, no.
acoustic things, how to balance them.
Hmm.
And now I can say that by hearing it from the monitor or from now one thing how the monitor can be adjusted that I did not have any idea which
Yeah.
mic is better or worse. So I could not understand the microphone that much yet, but in the beginning, but I figured out that okay, so these guys have a board and they have like these knobs.
Hmm.
So how
Hmm.
do I figured this out? I tried to experiment that like during the sound check in couple gigs. It did not work that well, and then I booked a studio
Uh-huh.
for an hour.
Uh-huh.
Uh, then I brought my tabla there, and then
Uh-huh.
I checked what are the frequencies like for all my strokes. Let's say na, tune, ge, and everything. And
Yeah.
then I put the spots. And then I
Uh-huh.
mapped them. Okay, so now for these sounds, if I want to do like a sharper, flatter, or do some modulation, so this is how I should be mapping. So
Yeah.
that one, like in a studio, I paid that money. So that was one of the best investment as a musician. So and then I knew that okay, these guys understand this is high, mid, low, and then this much frequency, and if they have a more sophisticated board. So I had that basic there. And that was kind of I had to be creative after getting frustrated with a lot of sound guys in different gigs.
Yeah. No, what a great story, because I think that so often it's easy to blame it on them, but taking that own your own sort of incentive to go to a studio, spend that money, travel there with your tabla, and then sit with the board painstakingly and mapping it out. I think I'll have to steal that idea from you at some point.
And then, there was another guy named Prithviraj, a very good composer and a good singer from Bangladesh, who also happens to be a disciple of Pandit Jayanta Bose,
Mhm.
who's Kumar Bose's elder brother.
Yeah.
So Prithviraj is maybe a year or two older to me, Prithi Dada. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was like a very nice guy and then very good singer and composer. So in his studio, we also like spent some time EQing, like, and I understood like where which sound, and then he also explained me what is a dynamic like microphone, what is a condenser microphone.
Mm.
he, I got those information, a lot of like those were first information I got like from him. And then after coming to New York here, I spent a fair amount of time with other engineers, like some friends, for example, Indra Rai Chaudhary, a sitar player, a good friend. He also like explained me some of the EQ star like, things. So all together, like with the but like I would say that the first like 1 hour in the studio time, that then coupled with all these like other hangs, that
Yeah.
that really gave me more perspective about the sound.
So far we've been talking about sound and tabla, and I guess in the modern day, there's so many different ways you can look at that, right? As a performing musician, as Mir Dada was just mentioning, the audio engineering aspect of a performing instru musician, excuse me, is an important aspect because that's what's representing your sound. But coming back to sort of the traditional tabla playing, if you will, the next set of questions that I'm hoping to ask are about sort of just anatomy of a tabla solo and Mirdada's thoughts about it. Now, for the viewers who may not be as familiar with tabla solos, generally they're sort of three different parts at three different layers in a broad sense, right? So we have a Vilambit section, then we have a Madhya section, and we have a Drut section. Now, accompanying each of those layers or speeds, right? You might have different sets of compositions that are traditionally associated with that. So in Vilambit section, we might have Utan or Peshkar as being a part of that. From Madhyalaya sections, we might have Qaida or guts. And Drut, we have Tukras, Moras, Chakradars, etc. in a broad sense. So coming back to your point of view, Mirdada, how has what reflections do you have on anatomy of a tabla solo? And sort of what things do you try to bring out in different sections? And the reason I'm asking this is because in some of the beautiful recordings you have online, you have some relas that you play in Vilambit section or rows you play in Vilambit section, which is very common in Farrukhabad, but not necessarily everywhere, right? So in things like this, how do you view the anatomy of a tabla solo and where you elect to put certain things?
Yeah, so again, like in a tabla solo, I also like to think in a little like so let's say it's different sections, different the total tabla solo you can think, or the way I think sometimes, uh, from bottom to top.
Mm,
So say you have 20 piece sections,
mm,
20 shorter sections, and then these sections can be divided into two groups. One is improvised and another is like fixed.
mm.
So the improvised section consists of Peshkar, Qaida, and Rela. And then the fixed section is the Tukra Chakra, they're all the compositions, which are, I think like these are poetry. And
Mm,
then the first section, that's storytelling.
mm.
So now out of these two sections, you have three lay. So Vilambit, Madhya, and Drut. And then Vilambit and Madhya are to me are the same. It's just how like bigger or shorter space you want.
The
But
condensing, yeah.
Obviously, because the Madhya and then the Vilambit definitely certain things sound better, but you can do a solo starting from Madhya as well. So
Right.
Vilambit or Madhya you can do everything. And for a lot of tal, let's say other than Teen tal, the expected lay is Madhya lay.
Mm,
Maybe almost like faster Vilambit. So then it's difficult to say, let's say which one is Vilambit and which one is Madhya lay, because you'll say Vilambit Jhaptal, but Vilambit Jhaptal is not as slow as Vilambit Tintal.
right.
Still need to feel the groove to some extent. So
Mm,
anyway, so now coming to the other, like the sections, the way I try to think the Farrukhabad Tabla solo, that the way I have heard in records and then by attending concerts and then throughout the Taalim, I think the Vilambitla is perfect for playing Utan and Peshkar, and then you can play some Qaeda there. You can play Rela. But if you think that you have already played enough, then you move to Madhya. Now you can select some of the stuffs, some of the repertoire, some of the compositions sound better in Madhya. So then you pick up those. And then some of the Qaedas, they are not going to sound as great in Vilambit. So
mm,
you have to pick up your vocabulary right away. But again, within this storytelling section, you can also play compositions
mm,
uh, with certain sections. I have seen, I've heard recordings of people uh, playing long chakradars in Vilambit,
mm.
So I heard Guruji, playing this chakradar, that Punjab style chakradar. The
Mm.
so this
Yeah.
one I heard Guruji presenting in Vilambit.
Right.
Now,
Abbaji's Chakradar. Yeah.
yeah. So now this Chakradar, and then other bowls. So now Vilambit and Madhulai are good for the storytelling section mostly. And
Mm,
then the Chakradar compositions sound better in Madhulai. Madhulai is good for Gath,
yeah.
and then Tukra Chakradar sounds better in the Drut. It's also easier to feed the Chakradars,
Mm.
because when you are in Madhulai, you need 8 beat,
Right. It needs to be extended. Yeah.
easier to fit a lot of compositions there.
Right. You have a shorter amount of time that so you know if it's one or nine, it can land either way. Um, there's something that you said that I really liked and I want to focus on it is sort of how different compositions might sound better at different layers or lays, right? You might be able to play this Qaida in Madhya or Drut, but here you're electing to play it in Vilambit. And so as you said that, I was sort of reflecting a little bit myself and thinking about one of in my mind, right? If you're
Mm.
choosing to take a composition and switch it to a different lay, there's probably something about the tonal aspect of that composition that's making it more presentable or more sufficient in that lay. Um, do you have any thoughts about this?
So sometimes it's more like, let's say, if you have certain compositions, so certain kaida. which in Vilambit it will feel a little empty. So
Mm.
let's say Tishra Kaida, I can think of so
Mm.
now this one in Vilambit is so this is like too long. Now in Madhya if you have it, cut the da, then da, da, then da, cut the. So this is better, and rhythmically and melodically, you can see the
The
grooves.
yeah, the
But it's
the chand
like,
of it. Yeah.
yeah, if it's like if you start playing a drut, then there's no time to express anything. So you cannot play kaidas in drut. Like
Yeah, no, it is difficult to express it in Riddler.
or Vilambit, but now depending on, and even that kind that can be played in Vilambit as well. So
Right.
now who prefers where, and then sometimes which one sounds good, or it depends also your variation. So let's say
Hmm.
you want to play certain types of variation. Let's say one kaida can stay like a more kaida kind of feel, or it can turn into more of a rela,
Right.
and then depends on how you're improvising.
Right.
Simple kaida you can improvise in a way that it sounds very mathematical, and then sometimes you can make variations where it's more straight.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
then, if you're playing on Vilambit, then probably you have like more liberty. When you're in Madhya, you definitely tend to pick up more shorter phrases because of that.
Yeah, what a great observation. Sort of the idea of how do you want to explore something or what angle do you want to take it from? And having that seemingly varied throughout the lifespan of the tabla solo itself. Uh, Coming back to tone, you've obviously studied with two great Farrukhabad masters, who have studied under a huge idol of mine, Pandit Gyan Prakash Ghoshji. Um, what would you say categorizes both the tone and the compositions of his thought process and Farrukhabad as a whole, if you can?
Yeah, it's difficult to so let's say really find, or even if I may have my observation, but these are like such great figures, and we as student, let's say I would rather take this question as an opportunity for answering in a way. Let's say this is a great piece of art, and then I am trying to appreciate that. So in
Mm.
not as a critique or authority, so the way I could benefit more, or the way I see the world. So let's say the traditional Farrukhabad, that was Ustad Masjid Khan Sahab, and then through Karamat Khan Sahab, and then Ustad Masjid Khan Sahab's like his compositions, so that stayed with Gyan Babu, and then Gyan Babu also studied with Firoz Khan Sahab from Punjab style, and then he studied with I don't recall the names. Also, he had Taalim on Pakhawaj, and he studied and hosted so many great musicians. So, and then Bari Guruji, what he did, he created a lot of compositions and a lot
Mm.
of which it sounds like Farrukhabad, then but he added a lot more vocabulary to it.
Yeah.
And he taught a lot of Punjab compositions to his disciples. So, and these Punjab compositions, what I have been told that these compositions, a lot of these, since Firoz Khan Sahib, came to to Kolkata. Now, those were not even like spread to other parts of India. So that's why Guruji plays a lot of compositions, which you cannot, you will not hear a lot of, other players play. And then you will probably hear it from Sanjay Mukherjee, or, anyone, from the school, Pandit Shankar Ghosh, Pandit Sanjay Mukherjee, all of them. So these Guru Bhais, they know Pandit Abhijit Banerjee. So they will play certain compositions, a lot of, this fixed poetry, rich poetry, that some of them also, Pandit Jogesh Shamsi, he also plays. And then probably so now there were like some shares that probably happened, I don't know. So all these things, this repertoire, and then the research what Guruji did, he composed a lot of qaida, a lot of like tukra chakradhar, so that enriched our repertoire.
Mm.
And throughout that, a lot of unique sound came out of all throughout his disciples. Pandit Shamal Bose, Pandit Shankar Ghosh, Guruji, Govind Bose, Pandit Sanjay Mukherjee. So all of like them contributed a lot to the repertoire and the number of tabla players as well
I'm
in both style.
I'm so happy you brought that up because I feel like in Bengal itself, there's such a synthesis of so many different gharanas and musical thought because we have the good fortune of having so many of these grand, bigger than life figures, amazing figures, to look up to. So it's, even that one composition, the Gat Kaida that you mentioned, like it's hard to say where to place that. It's sort of something within itself that became unique to that region. Now everyone is playing it, right?
Yeah, and then like it's meant to spread, and good compositions and everything that should be shared. And we don't, we live in a world where you can listen to everyone. So then, if you like another composition, so then you should play, and then we see this share happening more and more, and it will continue.
Yeah. No, the our capacity to share, I think now in this world is so easy now. You're really just a message or a YouTube video away to find something beautiful or inspirational,
Everyone
which
has played everything, and then they have uploaded everything that they can play.
mm. So coming to Riyaaz a little bit and your approach to it, or what you have been taught about it. How do you structure your Riyaaz? And do you come into it that there are certain compositions that I want to practice, or is it sort of a day by day feeling? What's your general approach to Riyaaz, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so for a long time, my Riyaaz was, let's say, a kind of school system. So I'm learning like one qaida and then then the next, and next.
Mm,
So so that like was for a long time. It still is. So one
mhm,
part of Riyaaz is like learning new things.
mm,
Uh, Go back to Taalim and then pick up new things and then work on a new qaida or do some do it from scratch. So that's like one. And then other part is I do some warm-up practice.
mm,
Uh, and for my practice, what has worked better for me is not maybe play one or two things, and focus on like that one or two particular thing, whether it can be a kaida or it can be a rela, it can be a couple compositions. Uh, but I want to do like stay within one group or one family for per day, or maybe like
yeah.
two maximum.
So you sort of group things together, and seems like you attack sort of one group of them at the same time, if you will.
Yeah,
Or yeah,
even less, maybe just like one kaida.
yeah,
One cat and maybe a couple compositions.
yeah,
That's my practice, and then yeah, and then maybe if I have some gig or like some work or I have to learn some stuff, then maybe I will learn that. But that's not Riaz. So that's maybe gig prep. So Riaz will be some warm up and some focused stuff. And then some other days when I feel like not play, playing fixed stuff, then I will just turn on the lehra or play like a solo. So it can be many things, but usually I try to focus on one or two particular thing per day.
I think like most things in life, there's a certain aspect when it comes to music as well that you sort of have to work it out, if you will. You have to take that painstaking effort to build your hand, to build your fingering around this something that's complicated. But then there's another side of it, like you mentioned, where you have to still be able to find that enjoyment, right? Or playfulness sometimes. So playing the lyra and then just seeing what you can do that day is I think a part of a lot of our our journeys or experience with tabla.
And you need to do everything. Let's say, so a very close thing to tabla is martial arts. So let's
Mhm.
say martial arts. So there's a certain different practices. So you do a lot of warm-ups. I used to do martial arts. I did it for 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
So in the martial art training, I saw how similar the art form is like with tabla practice as well.
Very
So
similar.
there's some drills where you do maybe like a lot of push-ups, you do a lot of freehand exercises, warm up, like you have to make your whole body warmed up. For judo, and you have to do a lot of rolls. So that's very comparable to your technique Riyaaz, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
want to do. And then maybe on your earlier stage, you have to play a lot of like palta type of Riyaaz to just make the hand flow. Because getting the hand kind of like working and moving and being able to vocalize any idea and be able to play, that takes a lot of time, a lot of years of like, many, many years. I don't think like, I've been there yet, but even to be able to understand what's being played by another other person,
Yeah.
that takes up a lot of like learning. It's a steep learning curve, and then the retention of like those ideas. You can have a lot of idea, but like how do you retain that? And then you have to organize that. So all those are part of Riyaaz,
Mm.
and that Riyaaz changes and evolves with like at what stage you are, and then what you want out of like tabla, or and because the it can be endless.
It is
So
endless, yeah.
no, it is endless, and like there's you can get always better. It's like
Mm.
playing video game,
Mm.
it's kind of the Candy Crush game where the levels are like 10,000, 20,000.
Mm. It's amazing to hear sort of these great masters over time because over time, each time it just ends up sounding so much sweeter. Right, like you mentioned Zakarji, and he was also coincidentally one of the first concert I saw was Zakarji and Shivji together in DC. And I think to this day I still get mad at myself because as like a 6-year-old kid I fell asleep throughout the whole concert. But I've come to realize that that may have been because I was so relaxed at that time that maybe the playing was so blissful that I fell asleep during that time. But anyways, that's aside. While seeing him in different scenarios throughout my life, each time what you get out of it seems to be just so much like just one building after another, building after another, building after another. So, yeah. So the next thing I want to focus on is accompaniment and also collaboration. So please, yeah, any thoughts about rather in New York, there's such a big community of musicians, both from Hindustani tradition, Carnatic tradition, world music, jazz. What efforts have you had, or what exposure have you had to, musical communities, and how have they inspired your playing or approach or learning process?
Yeah, music, and particularly tabla, or let's say drummers, okay, accompanists. So it's a primarily an accompanying instrument, and that is like the primary role. So 99% of the gigs you will play, like I'm talking about like everyone who's going to take it as a profession,
Hmm.
and then about the like not hobbies, so I just like learned. So the actual so someone like who eventually wants to play and make music. Uh, I'm not like I'm not saying that you cannot make music if you don't like take it as professional, but I'm saying like the standard has to be like really like high. So if your standard is high there, or at least like that is the goal, then the the goal like let's say you can fit into many many different shapes, and just like liquid or fluid, it can be like, and it does not like need to take his own shape. So accompaniment is just like that.
Hmm.
So and it's well, you can think like a grain of salt. Now, if the pot is big, if it requires like more salt, you give it more salt. If it does not require more salt, then if you uh, like do things that are not expected, then the dish is bad. As simple as that. And now it's easy to say that, but now how do you get there, or how do you even gauge that?
Hmm.
It's like trial and error. So you accompany people, you hang out with people. So back in home, I used to go and hang out with other musicians, elders, just like do some riaz or like meet up, and then go to different concerts, like see. not necessarily always like, just listening. So go out and uh, have a real interaction with somebody.
Yeah.
That adrenaline and that uh, experience and that memory, that helps like, you to go motivated and stay motivated. And then coming to New York, this New York has been like great. New York is home for the last 10 years. And from my second week in New York, I started like meeting people.
Wow.
New York is amazing. I already knew some musicians here before coming to New York. I knew Abig Dada. So Abig Dada I knew from my friend Shobik, who's also a fantastic sitar player, happens to be Abig Dada's cousin brother. So I, within second week, or third, within a month, I met Neil and like, some of my friends in music. So I met like musicians, and then I went to a lot of jams. I went to like, BRM used to have a weekly jam, uh, a jalopy, and then other venues. So I probably attended maybe 30, like, 20, 30 jams in 1 year.
Wow.
That was like hanging out, and then I took that as an opportunity to play with microphone. So that and they had this like sound, and then the jam, the standard of some of the musicians were good, and jam like some musicians were like maybe not that great, and then it's an open jam, so
Yeah.
anyone can show up, and then it's this for the speed of the music like there, like those memories. And I did not go there to get a gig or I was there to just explore the sound, and I was a grad student at that time,
Mhm.
so I'm like taking that opportunity to familiar myself like with sound.
Yeah.
uh, and then and that was a good practice opportunity as well. And then slowly what happened, like that was like what I did for a year or two. But within that time, also I started collaborating.
Mm.
Because when I came to New York and I started meeting people, I I was like, already like playing in Bangladesh. So I was performing there.
Mhm.
So for me, it was like, really nice to have the New York experience, because in Dhaka, the music scene is very small. So it's like a
Mm.
small scene if you compare to Kolkata or Dhaka, big compared to the bigger city. Even though Dhaka is big
Mhm.
uh, as a like a city, but the music scene is very small.
Mm.
So for me to grow as a musician, it was also like there was a limit in Dhaka. So which New York has been very kind, and I got opportunity to meet with Makam, like musicians, so all the Arabic musicians. Then I got to collaborate with chamber musicians, then composers, pianists, and definitely Hindustani musicians, Carnatic. I recently played a Carnatic concert with this Sri Lankan legend Bala Murugan.
Mm.
Uh, Nadesaram concert. So there was like Thavil players, then Mridangam players. So that was the first time I saw Thavil, and then
Mhm.
Nadesaram. So those I only saw them on YouTube.
Right.
So, and so these opportunities popped up sometimes. Sometimes life has been like very kind, and and then with the growth of tabla, like and I have been to like some like places where I wouldn't have like thought I would be like even be there, like
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe 15-year-old me or 16-year-old me wouldn't have like thought that like I will be giving a concert like this. But it's again like with the guru's blessings, like sometimes we have to like do the job.
Yeah. I think that's one unique aspect coming to sort of doing music in this country in the US. Playing for an audience that might not be so aware. How do you make yourself palatable to that? And obviously the music has a huge like intrinsic amount of palatability towards it. But the I think it's easy for someone to look at it, oh, it's like this is a classical music that's like very distant from me. It's a little bit intimidating. But to make that more of a natural experience for someone is something I think that we have to learn how to do and express.
It's also like, let's say, uh, music is like one part. So let's say you are doing a collaboration. So whenever you're doing a concert, you're doing a collaboration. A lot of time, like we forget, like there's a people aspect to it.
Of course. Yeah.
So our training and everything focus like towards the pedagogy, sort of the technique, or like I would say, too much time like we spend in Taalim. So the
Hmm.
people aspect. So let's say when you are playing with your genre, and there's no harm. So when I say that, like earlier I was mentioning, you have to be able to adapt. So a lot of
Mm.
like tabla players want to be genre specific. That is
Mm.
also you can like only play classical concerts. That's also fine. There's a lot of like people who has been playing their whole life only playing tikka with some song. Like that's also okay. It's still tabla,
Yeah. Yeah.
drum kit, and then it's an instrument. Now, if you choose classical music, that's okay. If you don't want, like you only want to play with some 4/4 beat and then make some videos, that's also okay. In any form that is fine. So it's again like their own personal priority. Now, if you are versatile, that then it's more work. You have to
Hmm.
adapt, and you have to adapt to the music. You have to be more open, and you have to sacrifice like your time, and you have to invest.
Hmm.
And then probably you will have more depth and understanding, and then you will be able to collaborate like better. Otherwise it will be a one-off project. Probably like you are trying to do something as an imposter, but I don't think like that's very respectful to any tradition.
Yeah. So learning how to adapt and be flexible, and also knowing what your likes and dislikes are, sort of natural inclination to it is definitely a huge part of this.
Yeah, and then let's say making music has to be fun also.
It has to be fun. Yeah.
If it's not a positive experience, probably this collaboration will not continue.
Yeah.
So it has to be a win-win. Like if let's say at the end of the day it's two people or like three people, and more people, like there's more constraint. So when you have like a band, and then our Indian Hindustani scene is more duo oriented.
Right.
So compared to that, the band and world music scene, it's a collaboration, or it's a like group job.
Right.
So how do you fit in? And then let's say there's five instruments like going on, and you cannot be the louder. You cannot just ask for more volume. So
Right.
how and then like how do you fit in, and then so that like everyone together makes one music? For that, like it's a lot of like work there. Your Talim definitely helps you
Yeah.
for like bad situations, and also like to take the glorified situations as well.
Yeah.
But you have to be also I remember Guruji once like told that uh, you need like 10 eyes around
Hmm.
you.
Hmm. 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 Sort of
And
awareness. Yeah.
you have to be aware, like you have to be able to predict.
Hmm.
And then and our job is a bit difficult sometimes because um, everyone plays in their own like style, and
Right.
then implement has to adapt to that.
Hmm.
So then you have to be a very good improviser as well and very ready. At least that is the expectation.
Yeah. Sort of knowing where the role is and what ways you can not over push it, but also just fit in like a puzzle, very nicely without disturbing.
Or like sometimes ask the artist, like or ask your collaborators, or like listen it back, and then there's already some norms, like let's say if you're playing a Hindustani, or like if you have already decided on the form, or there's certain things which is expected.
Right, right.
Well, if it's a bhajan, like in a religious, like very somber environment, you're not supposed to play a like
Rilla in the middle of a bhajan. Yeah.
or easy tick, or like immediately laggi. Maybe
Yeah.
yeah, at the ending you can like play some laggi.
Yeah.
You should have an agreement with that, or like you should look at how the singer is like presenting the song, and then maybe you can try out a little bit of like a little and see how they react,
How they respond. Yeah. Yeah.
and then maybe ask like so should I play, or like no, communication just because you're on the same team, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
goal is to uh, make the music good so that it's a good presentation. And also, if you are a good guy, and if you played good, and if you did not leave a bad impression, maybe that you will have more music to play. It's not a one
Right.
of
that personability aspect of music making is just as important as the music making itself.
Yeah, because I'm spending my time, you're spending your time, another person is spending their time, and if the time is good, probably you will want to do it again. And if the time is okay, maybe you will still do it. But if it's bad, then probably you'll try to avoid
Yeah,
it.
avoid it. Yeah, yeah. And most times for the best.
So,
Yeah. So this was such an amazing conversation, Mirdada. I really appreciate your time and your insight, and sort of observations. I'd like to end these
thank you.
conversations with something sort of fun. I know that a lot of musicians, tabla players in specific, love food. So my question to you is, favorite restaurant in New York City? What would it be?
Tough question. So many. One favorite is like difficult to say, but I can say one restaurant that I found recently, which is pretty good. Uh, so this restaurant, I forgot the name, and I should not I should do the But there's maybe the cuisine. So Yemeni cuisine, I
Hmm.
I really like Yemeni cuisine these days, and Yemeni food is pretty close to. It's kind of a good mix of Mediterranean food and also Indian spices.
Yeah, yeah.
So Yemeni restaurants, one place Hadramaut on Atlantic. That's like one of my favorite.
Hadramaut. That's
Hadramaut.
that sounds interesting. Yeah, the I think in the Yemeni and Middle Eastern Moroccan places, the tradition is to sort of sit on the floor and to share from one common plate. So much very similar to
Look like that. This is like we have like more like regular table chair.
more
Not
okay.
like fancy, but decent. But you will really love the food.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mirdada, for your time, and hopefully meet in person sometime soon.
Of course. Hey, enjoy the rest of your evening and take care.
Yes. Bye bye.